Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, Paperbacks and Lattes. My name is Paige and today I want to tell you some deaf/mute romances that I have read. So in this video, I'm going to recommend some romance books that I have read that have deaf/mute characters in it, one or the other, either where they are deaf or just cannot speak, something to that extent. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one I want to recommend is Transcendence by Shay Savage. This is in the Transcendence series, and this is a caveman romance. So the heroine accidentally goes back in time to the caveman era, and she meets a caveman who thinks that she is his mate, and she is stuck in his time, and he is spent, he cares for her, and she is his whole world, and they can't communicate because he cannot speak. She does eventually teach him 2 words, and he kind of says them, but for the most part, he cannot communicate with her because he doesn't possess the ability to speak, and he can't sign, he can't do anything. The only way they can communicate is through facial expressions and, gestures, and just getting to know the other person. And their romance was so sweet. She ends up, of course, falling in love with him, and of course he's been in love with her from the very beginning, and they make a beautiful life together even though he cannot speak and they cannot communicate through language. The next one is Echo by Sevenru. This is about a girl named Echo, and she is deaf, and she is on the run from her stepfather has treated her horribly. Her mother abandoned her to her stepdad, and he is awful. And so she finally gets her chance to escape, and she is running through these woods. She has no idea where she's at. She's lost her shoes, she's barefoot, she just doesn't know where to go, and she stumbles upon this cabin in the woods. It's unlocked, and so she goes in and makes herself at home. She stays there for a little while, and then the 3 men who are brothers, their names are Willem, Summit, and Norden. And this is like their hunting cabin because they have a business, and this is like part of their business is where they will spend a few months at this cabin hunting, and then that because people pay for the meat and furs and whatnot. And so they come to this cabin and find this girl staying in their cabin. And this is a reverse harem because she is with all 3 brothers, and she cannot speak. One of the brothers knows sign language because he had to learn it for some reason. And so they are able to communicate, and the other 2 learn sign language as they fall in love with her. And this was a really sweet romance. They really take her under their wing and protect her, and they end up all falling in love with each other. The next book is Speechless by Kim Fielding. This has 2 heroes in it. This is a male romance. This is about Travis and Drew. So Drew was in an accident, and it left him with a condition that something in his brain where he cannot speak and he cannot write. Like all form of communication is cut off from him. And so he meets Travis because Travis goes by his house every day on his way home from work, and he hears Drew playing the guitar, and he is fixated on this. And then finally, he gets up the courage to go talk to him, and then realizes that Drew cannot communicate with him. So this was their love story, and it was very sweet. The next one is It Ain't Me Babe by Tillie. This is the first book in the Hades Hangman series. I absolutely adore the series, and the first book is about Styx. That's his motorcycle club name, And he is the president of this motorcycle club, and he cannot speak because he has a stuttering problem. And he only speaks to like his best friend and of course his the heroine later on. But he does not speak in front of anybody else. He uses sign language to communicate. And he, for the ones who do not know sign language, his best friend, which is the vice president, translates his sign. This is more of a dark romance because it deals with heavy subjects, because the heroine comes from a cult that does horrible things to girls and to women. And there is a lot of trigger warnings in this book. There are, you know, of course it's a motorcycle club, it's dark, but it is so good. Oh, I loved it so much. This was an excellent first book to a series. The next one is Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. Oh, I absolutely adored this book and I adored the series. This is about Sydney and Ridge. So Sydney and her boyfriend live in an apartment, and every day she hears Ridge play his guitar from like the next balcony over. And she loves hearing him play his guitar, but he never sings to his music. He just, you know, plays songs. And so she writes the lyrics in her head that go along with the music. So one day Sydney finds out that her boyfriend has been cheating on her with her best friend, and she is distraught. She has nowhere to go. Ridge lets her stay at his place, and she finds out that Ridge is deaf. And Ridge writes songs for his brother's band. And that is like his contribution to the band, since he can't sing, but he can play the guitar and he writes the songs for the band. But he has not been inspired by anything, and so he's been having trouble writing these songs. She tells him that she's been like writing lyrics for his songs because she hears him play it every day. And so they start working together to write songs for the band, and they grow close in this, even though Ridge does have a girlfriend. And that is, of course, something that holds them back from being together. But things are resolved in the end, and I love their story. So, so, so good. The next one is Broken Night by LJ Shen. This is the spinoff series from her Vicious series. Sinners of Saint series, I think is what it's called. And this is those children of the characters from the first series. So Night and Luna are both children of the guys from the first series. Luna experienced something traumatic when she was little. Her mother abandoned her and she was left all alone in her crib for days. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink, left in a dirty diaper until her father discovered her, that she had been abandoned. She remembers this because she has this amazing memory, and so she remembers everything. And since she experienced that traumatic experience, she has not been able to speak. So this is more of a selective mute, because she does say a couple of words here and there, and then eventually this is her and Night's story, because Night has always been her best friend and has always been protective of her, especially because she is mute. And she's always kind of relied on Night and the people around her, but then she realizes that she needs to figure out things for herself and become independent on her own. And there she starts to, like grow in herself. She starts to become her own person, and eventually she does learn to speak. And but for the most part of the book, she is mute. The next one is Archer's Voice by Sheridan. There is a girl who moves to this town, and she meets Archer, and he is deaf and he cannot speak, and he knows sign language, and she also knows sign language because her dad was deaf. And they form up the friendship turn relationship, but he is like the town loner. He is the black sheep that nobody wants to be around. They think he's all crazy, and he's just stuck to himself, and he's taught himself everything he knows. And so she has to teach him, like how to be in society. And this was an amazing read. I loved it so much. The next one is My Torin by Webster. So this is about Torin, and he actually has autism, and that makes him, he has a really hard time communicating. He's an extremely smart guy, but he has trouble communicating through speech. He can say a few things, but it's very hard for him to be able to communicate that way. So he communicates through like emails and texting. And him and his brother rescue this girl from a very horrible situation because she has been in the foster system all her life. And she is in this really bad foster home, and they rescue her from it when Torin sees her one day because they both go like to the same therapist. He sees her and he automatically connects with her. So Torin and his brother rescue her from this foster situation and bring her to live with them. And this is their romance. Very, very good. There's a little bit of twists and turns through the story, but it's an excellent read. The next one is Fallback, Skyward by Autumn Gray. The hero in the story is deaf. He cannot hear, and he uses sign language to communicate. And the heroine of the story, she meets him, and they have an instant attraction to each other, an instant bond. And she begins to learn sign language to be able to communicate with him. I think he can also read lips as well. But he is deaf. This was a very amazing read. And the whole thing is, when you first start reading it, she is married. He is getting out of prison, and he finds out that she married his brother. So there's this whole thing that you don't know about until, you know, later on in the book, where it's revealed about what happened because they were kept apart by her father. And I love their story of how, you know, they are just like meant for each other. They are soulmates. And then something rips them apart where they cannot be together. And the journey through their story is such an amazing read. The next one is actually an historical romance. This is a Notorious Vow by Joanna Shupe. The hero is deaf in the story. The heroine comes because they meet because she walks through his gardens every morning. He finds out that she's there, and he tells her to never come back. Well, she does, because she keeps, you know, she wants to keep walking through his gardens because that's like her only chance of escape from her parents. Her parents want her to marry because they are out of money. They need money, and they are trying to make her marry this awful guy, this old awful guy. And it turns out to be a marriage of convenience because he, you know, starts to get to know her, and he feels sorry for her, and he wants to try to rescue her from this very bad situation that she's being forced into. And this was a really good read. Really, I haven't read that many historical romances, but this one was very, very good. The next one is Only When It's Us by Chloe Liese. This is about Ryder and Willa. They actually meet in college, and Willa she is a soccer player, and she is on the college soccer's women's team, and she has missed some class and missed some notes, and so she needs the notes for the class. Well, the professor told her to get the notes from Ryder. So she sits next to him in the class and asks him to give her the notes. Well, he's not looking at her, and he's deaf, but she doesn't know this. And since he didn't hear her, he didn't know that she asked for the notes, and he completely ignores her on accident. She thinks it's on purpose because she thinks he's just trying to be mean to her. And so she automatically starts hating him. So this is a kind of an enemies to lovers romance. Until she realizes that he's deaf, and then she feels like a jerk. But this is their romance. Ryder was a soccer player before, but he got an illness, and it made him very hard of hearing because one ear he's completely deaf in, and the other it's really hard for him to hear out of. So this was their romance. It was amazing, so amazing. This was the first book to the Bergman Brothers series. And they're just simply excellent books. The next one is another historical romance. This one is Annie's Song by Katherine Anderson. This is about a girl who is deaf, but nobody knows she's deaf because they think she's simple-minded. Like, she cannot understand things, but she is actually very smart. She actually reads everybody's lips, and she taught herself that. And her mother and father think that she's simple-minded, and so does everybody else. And she is raped, and she becomes pregnant, and so they are trying to figure out what to do with her. And the brother of the guy who raped her feels responsible for her, so he agrees to marry her. And, you know, so she's like not ruined, or he's gonna take the baby. After she has it, he's gonna take the baby and raise it, and then she'll go back to her parents. But while she's living with him, he realizes that there is more to her than what people think she is. And then he realizes that she's just simply deaf, that she's very smart, and he's amazed that, you know, she knows everything that's going on around her because she can read people's lips. But when she's not facing someone, she can't, you know, she can't read their lips. So that's often why people think she's simple, because she doesn't always know what's going on around her because, you know, she can't hear. So an excellent read. This is their journey of falling in love and righting wrongs that have been done to her. And it was just so excellent, but also it has trigger warnings of rape, so be aware of that before going into this book. The next book is in the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. I'm not sure what number book. I forgot to write it down. I will have it in the description below, though. This one is Barbarian's Touch, and this centers around Rokon and Lila. Some of the aliens' names in this series are super hard to pronounce, but this essentially is about this group of girls who get kidnapped from Earth by aliens, and then they crash the alien ship to try to rescue themselves, and they crash land on this ice planet, and there lives these tall blue aliens, and they have to receive a kui it's like a parasite thing that they have to inject into themselves to be able to live on this planet. So the kui lets them know who they are mated to. And Lila is a deaf girl who was taken from Earth, and she actually resonates to Rokon. And he is trying to, you know, he doesn't know sign language, and she is trying to teach him sign language. And so they have struggle in the beginning learning how to communicate with each other, but she teaches him sign language, and they have a beautiful romance. The next one is The Silent Waters by Brittainy C. Cherry. This revolves around Brooks and Maggie. Maggie saw something horrific happen when she was a little girl, and she has been traumatized by this. She's not been able to speak ever since this happened or leave her house. And so she grows up in her house, but Brooks is their best friend, like her and her brother best friend, and he comes by every single day, like before they go to school, to check on her, see how she's doing. They share music together. They have an amazing friendship before anything romantic ever happens. And she is, you know, unable to speak to him, but, you know, they communicate in other ways. And until the day where she has to be there for him after something happens to him, and she has to find the courage to be there for him, just like he has been there for her all of these years. This was an amazing story. This book is part of the Element series by Brittainy C. Cherry. The next one is Mute by M.L. Nystrom. This is the first book of the series. I'm not sure what it's called, but this is a motorcycle club romance, and this is about Mute. He is in this motorcycle club, and this motorcycle club owns this bar, and he's like the bouncer for the bar because he's such a, you know, big tough guy. And there is this girl who comes to work at the bar, and she's never been around this type of life before. She's just really desperately needing a job, so they hired her, and this was their romance. And the last one I have is Tone Deaf by Olivia Rivers. It's been a really, really long time since I've read this, so I may not have, so the details are a little fuzzy, but this is about a girl who, I think she's being mistreated by her father, and she runs away. She goes to this concert, and she meets the lead singer of the band, and he's extremely rude to her after he finds out she's deaf. And she, doesn't understand why he has treated her this way. And come to find out, he lost somebody very close to him who was deaf. And so it just kind of like brings back all those memories of her. But he actually takes her on his bus with her after he finds out, what's been happening to her, and he's trying to protect her and look after her. But he's also fighting his feelings for her because, he doesn't want to really let her in because she's kind of invading his life, and in a good way, but also in a way where it just brings up memories that he's trying to suppress. But this is their romance. So those are some romance books that have mute or deaf characters in them. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you have any recommendations for me. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.